This story doesn't start with a hero, a battlefield, or a miracle. It starts with an old diner, one that was only 14 days away from shutting down forever. No customers, no money, no future, just a tired woman, a forgotten wall of photos, and a secret no one knew anymore. But then something unbelievable happened. A man walked in with a German shepherd by his side. He saw an old picture on the wall and realized he was in it. A meal he didn't remember. Turned out to be a debt he never paid. And when he shared the truth online, the world didn't just watch. They came. Veterans from every state. Motorcycles, RVs, wheelchairs, uniforms, medals, handwritten letters, prayers, tears, a dying diner became a living memorial. If you believe kindness never dies, you need to see what happened next. Stay to the end. And if this story touches your heart, please subscribe, leave a comment, and share it. Thank you for being here, and may God bless everyone who still believes in miracles. The late autumn wind rolled across the quiet outskirts of Red Oak, a small roadside town in Montana, where the highway cut through miles of fading yellow grass and scattered maple trees, shedding their last leaves. The afternoon sky carried a soft, gray tint, the kind that hinted winter was just a few weeks away, and the air smelled faintly of wood smoke from distant chimneys. Along the road stood an old diner with a fading red sign that once read Mary's Diner, though time and weather had peeled half the paint away. The parking lot was almost empty, except for a dusty blue pickup truck and a rust-spotted newspaper vending machine that had not been refilled in months. Jack Morgan stepped out of his truck, closing the door with the familiar weight of someone who never rushed into anything. He was 48, tall and broad-shouldered, with a roughness that never fully left a man who had served in the Marine Corps. His black and gray beard was trimmed short, his jaw angular, and a faint scar ran from his left ear to the edge of his neck, a reminder from a mission he didn't talk about. He wore a worn-out military-style jacket, jeans faded from years on the road, and boots that had walked through both war zones and quiet American towns. His eyes, deep hazel, carried the look of someone who had seen too much, but still chose quiet over bitterness. Beside him hopped down Rex, his loyal German shepherd, 8 years old, with a strong frame and a coat mixed with tan and black, though the fur around his muzzle had turned silver from age. Rex moved with disciplined awareness, ears perked, scanning without barking, the way a retired military K-9 never fully forgets service training. He stayed close to Jack, tail low but comfortable, as if silently guarding the man he considered his final mission. Jack glanced at the diner through the glass window. Only 2 tables occupied, the rest empty. The diner lights were on, but even the neon open sign flickered weakly, like it was unsure if the place still wanted to stay alive. Jack pushed the door open, hearing the soft ring of the bell above it, the kind that had welcomed truckers, travelers, and soldiers for decades. Inside, the smell of fresh coffee mixed with old wood and frying oil that had soaked into the walls over years. Behind the counter stood Mary Wilson, a woman in her late 60s with silver hair tied loosely in a bun and a pair of rounded glasses hanging from a thin chain. Her face was lined, not only from age but from the kind of work that required standing 12 hours a day and pretending nothing was wrong. She had a soft, motherly aura, but her shoulders slumped as if she were carrying invisible weight. She wore a faded floral apron and tried to smile when customers entered, though the smile rarely reached her tired blue eyes. "Afternoon, hun," she said, voice warm but drained. "Sit anywhere you like. Not exactly a crowd today." Jack nodded, giving a polite half-smile. "Seems peaceful." Peaceful, Mary chuckled softly, is what people call it when no one's showing up. A young waitress passed by, Sarah Miller, maybe 22, slim, brown hair tied in a practical ponytail, freckles across her nose. She wore a loose diner uniform and running shoes, the kind of outfit that said she used to dream bigger, but life had temporarily placed her here. She gave Jack a small nod, then bent down to scratch Rex behind the ear. "Hey, buddy, you're a handsome one." Rex accepted the attention calmly, sitting upright like a professionally trained ambassador. Jack took a booth seat. Rex curled at his feet, and Mary poured him a cup of coffee. Up close, Jack noticed the light tremble in her hand, the kind that didn't come from age alone but from stress and exhaustion. "You're new around here?" she asked. "Just passing through," Jack replied. "Haven't been in this part of Montana in a long time." "Used to be busier," Mary said, glancing around the empty room. "Back then we'd have lines out the door. Soldiers, families driving cross-country, truckers from the base a few miles out." Her voice trailed off, not with nostalgia but with resignation. Jack watched her for a moment, sensing there was more unsaid. "What happened?" "Oh." Mary exhaled, leaning her hand against the coffee pot. "Times changed. Gas prices went up. The base got smaller. Folks moved away. And now..." She hesitated, eyes drifting toward the register. "2 more weeks and I shut the doors for good. Can't run a diner on memories." Jack sipped his coffee, thinking. He had seen a lot of places die slowly. Towns, friendships, men. But something about this diner felt familiar in a way he couldn't place. He scanned the walls where framed photos hung, yellowed with age, soldiers in uniform, groups laughing, people holding paper cups of coffee outside the diner years ago. A life that once filled the room, now reduced to silent photographs. One picture in particular caught his eye. A group of young Marines in dusty fatigue sitting at a long diner table, bowls of chili in front of them, smiling in a way soldiers only smiled when they were temporarily safe. At the far end of the photo, a boyish-looking Marine stared into the camera with a half grin, his hair shorter, his face unscarred, his eyes brighter. Jack stared harder. It was him. 25 years ago. He leaned back, stunned by the sudden recognition, as if a drawer of his past had been yanked open without warning. Mary followed his gaze and nodded quietly. "You boys came in here a lot back then," she said. "Never had money. I fed you anyway." She forced a small laugh. "Figured if some of you didn't come back from wherever they sent you, at least you left this place with a full stomach once." Jack didn't answer. He was still staring at the young version of himself, alive, cocky, with a future he hadn't yet broken. Rex nudged his leg, sensing a shift in Jack's breathing. The diner was silent again, but now the silence wasn't empty. It was full of something Jack had forgotten he owed. And that was when he finally understood. This wasn't just a place. It was part of his own story, one he never knew he had left unfinished. Mary stood behind the counter wiping the same spot on the surface for the 3rd time. Not because it needed cleaning, but because people who are about to lose something often cling to small motions they can still control. The warm light above her cast a soft glow on the silver strands of hair falling loose from her bun, and for a moment, Jack wondered how many nights she had stayed here after closing, sitting alone in a booth, thinking of the days when this diner was full of noise and laughter and uniforms. Jack remained seated in the booth, hands wrapped around a mug of coffee gone lukewarm. The quiet inside the diner felt different now, no longer empty, but heavy with what had once lived here. Rex lay calmly at Jack's feet, head resting on his paws, his brown eyes tracking every movement Mary made as if sensing that something fragile was unraveling in the room. "You fed Marines for free?" Jack finally said, breaking the silence, though his voice carried something deeper than curiosity. It was guilt buried under years of distance. Mary sighed, leaning her elbows on the counter, looking smaller and older than she had when he first walked in. "For almost 20 years, she said. Boys would come in right after deployment, sometimes before. Some didn't have wallets. Some looked like they hadn't slept in days. I figured—" She paused, searching for the right words. "You don't deny a meal to a kid who might never make it back. I wasn't giving them food. I was giving them one normal hour in a world that wasn't normal anymore." Jack looked down, jaw tightening. He remembered those days now, the long nights before shipping out, the way fear turned into jokes, and how a bowl of hot chili tasted better than a medal when you thought it might be your last meal in the country. And yet he had never known who made that possible. "Why didn't you ever ask for money from the base? A donation? A program?" Jack asked. "Oh, they offered," Mary said with a tired laugh. "But money changes the meaning of things. I didn't do it to get paid. It was just something I could do." Her eyes clouded, and for a second, her voice cracked. "And now, I can't even do that." Sarah, the young waitress, walked past carrying a tray of glasses. Up close, her tired brown eyes and faint dark circles told their own story. Someone working 2 jobs, not out of ambition, but necessity. She gave Mary a worried glance before forcing a smile at Jack. The kind people wear when they hope things turn out okay, but don't expect them to. Sarah had only worked there 6 months, but she already knew the diner was more than a building. It was a memory bank. "You ever think of selling the place?" Jack asked quietly. Mary nodded. "Buyers want to tear it down. Put in another gas station or some chain store that doesn't know the name of a single soldier who ever walked through this door." She swallowed thickly. "They don't want the booths, the photos, the stories. They just want the land." Rex suddenly stood up and walked toward Mary, brushing his head against her leg in a slow, gentle way. Mary froze, then let out a small breath. Not quite a sob, but the kind of sound someone makes when an animal understands them better than people do. She bent down, stroking his fur, her hand trembling only slightly. "He's a good dog," she whispered. Jack nodded. He was military, too. Served longer than I did. He didn't say the rest, that Rex had saved his life more times than he could count, that the dog's hearing had gone slightly dull after years of explosions and helicopter rotors, that the reason Rex never barked wasn't obedience, it was emotional fatigue. A bell jingled as the diner door opened, and an older man in mechanic overalls entered. Tom Barker, a local in his 50s, with oil-stained hands and a salt and pepper beard. He had the posture of someone used to leaning under cars, and his voice was loud enough to fill a room even when the room didn't need filling. "Afternoon, Mary," he said, dropping a few bills in the jar labeled, "If you served, you eat free here." "Place still standing?" Mary smiled weakly. "Barely." Tom looked at Jack and Rex. "You two travelers or staying long?" "Just passing through," Jack replied. "That's what they all say," Tom chuckled, then lowered his tone. "But people who sit near that wall," he pointed to the photo-covered side, "usually find a reason to stay a while." Jack didn't answer, but the words hit deeper than Tom intended. Because he wasn't just passing through anymore, not after seeing that photograph. When Tom left, the diner fell quiet again. Jack finally asked the question that had been crawling at the edges of his mind. Did any of the Marines ever come back to say thank you? Mary looked out the window, her reflection small and tired in the glass. A few. Some sent postcards. Some never sent anything. Some. She hesitated, voice almost a whisper now. Never made it home to send anything at all. She put a hand on the counter, steadying herself. But I never blamed them. I knew what I was feeding wasn't just hunger. It was fear. And fear doesn't write thank you notes. Jack's throat tightened. Not from sadness, but from the unspoken truth inside Mary's words. She had been giving something he never knew he was receiving. And now that the place was dying, so was that piece of history. Jack looked at the old photo again, long and hard. And this time he didn't just see himself younger. He saw a debt that had never been repaid. And he felt the weight of it settle on him like a mission he hadn't completed. Rex sat beside him again, tail flicking once, as if confirming what Jack already knew. They couldn't just walk away. The next morning, the air outside the diner was colder. The kind of crisp chill that hinted winter was only a breath away. Jack stood beside his truck, leaning against the door with a small black camera in his hand. The kind used by travel vloggers, though Jack had never imagined himself as one. His reflection in the truck window looked like a man preparing for a mission he never trained for. Rex sat beside him, tail resting still against the gravel, alert but calm, as if he sensed his human was about to cross a line that could not be uncrossed. Jack didn't sleep much the night before. The memory of that picture on the wall, the laughter frozen in time, the version of himself who didn't know how lucky he was. It kept circling his mind like a drone over a battlefield. He had tried to walk away. He even drove past the next town before turning the truck around without thinking. Some debts follow you even when the world forgets them. Inside the diner, Mary was already working, even though there were barely any customers before noon. She moved slower today, her knees stiff, but still wiped down tables that no one had touched. Sarah arranged napkins with the quiet care of someone who didn't want Mary to see pity in her eyes. Jack entered, camera in hand, and Mary raised an eyebrow. "What's that for, hun? You filming a commercial for the world's saddest diner?" "Something like that," Jack replied, settling his camera on the counter. "I want to tell your story. The real one." Sarah paused, watching curiously. She tucked a loose strand of brown hair behind her ear, the kind of soft gesture that showed she wasn't used to being looked at, only seen in passing. "Like, online?" Jack nodded. "Yeah, online. Most people think the internet is full of noise, but sometimes, if the right story gets told, people listen." Mary gave a small laugh, though her voice carried both disbelief and exhaustion. "I'm not much of a story." "That's not true," Jack said, picking up the camera. "You fed Marines for free. You carried others when no one carried you. That matters." Rex walked to Mary again and rested his head gently on her knee. Mary looked down at him and smiled without meaning to. "That dog of yours knows exactly when to show up." "He's got a better sense for people than most humans," Jack replied. Jack began recording. First the outside of the diner. The chipped doorframe, the faded sign, the American flag still hanging, though half its colors had worn to pale fabric. Then the interior. The wall of photos, the empty booths, the jar labeled, "If you served, you eat free here." He filmed Mary talking about the past, not with dramatics, but with sincerity. Her voice soft, her hands folding and unfolding the corner of her apron like she was holding memories instead of fabric. She didn't ask for sympathy. She just told the truth. Jack made Sarah speak too, even though she nervously kept her hands clasped in front of her. "I never served," she said, "but every time a veteran walks in, Mary remembers their name, even if it's been 10 years. I've never seen that kind of loyalty before. Tom Barker walked in midway through the recording and laughed when Jack pointed the camera at him. "You trying to make me famous?" he said. Tom had the kind of rough voice that sounded like tires on gravel, but when he said, "Mary saved a lot of young men without ever picking up a gun," the tremor in his tone betrayed how deeply he meant it. Jack ended the video by looking into the camera, his voice steady but weighted. "If you ever served in the Marine Corps, or if someone you loved did, this diner is part of your history, even if you never knew it. And if we let it close, we aren't just losing a building. We're losing proof that kindness never needed a receipt." He uploaded the video that night with a title that didn't try to look poetic. "She fed Marines for 20 years. Now her diner is dying." Help Mary save the diner. He expected maybe a few shares, maybe a handful of comments. He did not expect the video to hit 10,000 views in the first hour, then 50,000 by midnight, then 120,000 by the time the sun rose. The comment section filled faster than Mary's register ever had. "I remember this diner. She fed me the night before deployment. I thought she was gone. I'm driving up this weekend. She fed me free when I was 19 and scared to death. Count me in. $19.99 bowl of chili, best meal I ever had." Some comments came from usernames with avatars of young soldiers. Others came from widows posting in the name of men who never made it home. And then came the one that made Jack freeze. "I was in that photo on the wall. I owe her a meal now." Rex was lying beside Jack when he read that one, and for the first time since they had returned to this town, Jack felt the shift, the moment when a story stopped being a memory and started becoming a movement. The diner wasn't saved yet, but for the first time in years, it wasn't dying quietly. On the fourth morning after Jack posted the video, Mary's diner was no longer silent. The stillness that once lived in the parking lot had been replaced by the deep rumble of Harley engines, the squeak of Jeep tires on gravel, and the low hum of RV generators as vehicles lined the roadside, stretching far beyond the diner's faded sign. Flags fluttered from antennas, some bright and new, some frayed from years of memorial rides, and the air carried the smell of exhaust, coffee, leather jackets, and cold November wind. Inside, the diner was fuller than it had been in decades. The booths were packed, every table taken, and even standing room was hard to find. Men and women, most in their 50s, 60s, or 70s, wore Marine Corps caps, old service jackets, unit patches, medals pinned to denim vests, or simply shirts showing the eagle, globe, and anchor. Some walked with canes, others with prosthetic legs, others with shoulders still squared, like they never really left the battlefield. The bell above the door never stopped ringing, and Sarah, who had once floated quietly through an empty space, was now a blur of motion, carrying plates, refilling coffee, balancing trays in her thin arms that seemed stronger than they looked. Her freckles flushed pink from the heat of the kitchen and the rush of orders, but for the first time since she started working here, she was smiling without having to pretend. Mary stood behind the counter, but not working, just standing, frozen, hands shaking, eyes wide as if she were watching a dream unfold that she wasn't sure she was allowed to believe in. Her floral apron looked the same, but her posture didn't. She stood tall now, not tired and folded in on herself. Veterans approached her one by one, some hugging her, some simply placing a hand on her shoulder, some unable to speak at all before emotion broke their voices. The first man she hugged was a tall veteran in his late 60s, African-American, bald, with a strong jaw and a deep scar running across his eyebrow, Sergeant Lewis Carter. His grip was firm, but his eyes were wet. "You fed me chili on the night before my first deployment, ma'am," he said, voice heavy. "I didn't think I'd make it home, but I did, and I've remembered that meal for 43 years. He pressed a crumpled $100 bill into her hand and walked away before she could protest. Next came a woman in a wheelchair. Elena Brooks, mid-40s, short black hair, tan skin, wearing a Marine veteran sweatshirt and dog tags. She placed a small fabric pouch on the counter. "I can't cook anymore, but I embroidered this for you. I stitched every name I could remember, people who ate here before they shipped out." Inside the pouch was a folded cloth square with dozens of names sewn in careful red thread, some with a small cross stitched beside them. Others left handwritten letters, museum-worthy medals, stacks of bills, even a folded battle flag that had once flown in Afghanistan. A ripple of emotion grew in the room. Not pity, not charity, but debt being repaid in the only currency soldiers trusted. Gratitude with no expiration date. Jack stood near the wall of photographs, leaning against it with arms crossed, not taking credit, not accepting praise. He wasn't the reason they all came. Not really. He was just the messenger. They came because Mary had fed them before life hardened them, before war rewired them, before death took some of their brothers and left the rest walking ghosts. Jack didn't need applause. He just needed the diner to live. Rex sat beside him, watching the room with calm, intelligent eyes. Some veterans knelt to greet him, scratching his gray muzzle, recognizing the service in another soldier without needing words. A local news crew entered, camera operator and reporter, both young, both wide-eyed at the sight of a crowd that looked like a reunion of ghosts who refused to stay dead. The reporter, Emily Foster, mid-30s, blonde hair in a neat bun, blazer wrinkled from rushing to the scene, spoke to Jack while the camera rolled. "Sir, are you the one who made the video?" Jack shook his head. "I just told the truth. They're the story." Outside, cars were still arriving. The parking lot overflowed, so people started lining the roadside. Camp chairs, flags, patches, old helmets hanging from mirrors like wind chimes of memory. Someone set up a speaker and played a slow instrumental version of the Marines' hymn. A man in a leather vest led a prayer circle. Another group formed at the old photo wall, identifying faces from 30 years ago, calling names of those missing, those buried, those still fighting battles no one saw. And Mary, who had spent so many mornings staring at empty seats, finally broke. She covered her mouth with her hand and cried the way only someone who held themselves together too long could cry. Not loud, not dramatic, just raw release. Sarah hugged her from the side, and even Tom Barker, the rough mechanic, stood behind them, wiping his eyes like a man who refused to admit tears were tears. Jack didn't move toward her. He stayed back because this wasn't about him. Rex leaned into his leg, the steadying presence he always was, and Jack whispered, "We did what we came to do, buddy." But even as he said it, he knew something else. This wasn't the end. It was only the beginning of what the diner was about to become. The next week moved like a breath held between endings and beginnings. The crowd of veterans didn't disappear after the first rush. They kept coming, in smaller waves, but with the same purpose. Some stopped for a single cup of coffee. Some stayed 3 hours, telling stories Mary hadn't heard in decades, and others came just to touch the wall of photos, as if laying a hand on memory kept certain ghosts from fading. Mary no longer walked with the slow, resigned steps of someone waiting for the world to close on her. She stood straighter now, voice surer, cheeks flushed with a kind of life that coffee and routine had never given her. Even the wrinkles along her eyes looked different, not carved by exhaustion, but by laughter finally returning to her face. Jack watched from a nearby booth as Mary wrote in a notebook, with a kind of excitement that felt almost childlike. "I'm changing the name," she said when he approached. "Not Mary's Diner anymore. That name belongs to the past. This place became bigger than me a long time ago." "What are you calling it?" Jack asked, though he already sensed the answer. "Veterans Table," Mary said, tapping the page with her pen. "Because this place didn't survive because I owned it. It survived because they claimed it. Every man and woman who ever sat here hungry and walked out full, that's who this place belongs to now." Sarah stood nearby, drying glasses with a towel, her brown ponytail swaying as she nodded in agreement. Her face, once a quiet shadow in a silent diner, now showed a sense of belonging she didn't think she'd find in this old roadside town. "You really think it'll stick?" she asked. "It won't stick," Mary said, smiling. "It'll grow." Outside, a carpenter truck pulled in. Eddie Coleman, mid-50s, stocky, sandy beard, always smelling faintly of sawdust and tobacco. He was the kind of man whose hands were scarred, not from violence, but from building things that lasted longer than people. "Heard you need a new sign," he said, stepping out with a plank of polished cedar strapped to the back of his truck. "I'm not charging you. You fed my nephew when he came home from Fallujah. I wasn't there to welcome him. You were." Eddie worked under the morning light, carving the new name into the wood by hand, while a small group of veterans stood around him like witnesses at a quiet ceremony. The letters took shape slowly. "Veterans Table where service is never forgotten." When the sign was finished, the crowd didn't clap. They touched it. Palms, fingertips, fists pressed gently against the wood, as if consecrating it. Then Mary brought out a box of markers and said, "If this place lives because of you, then your names should live on it too." One by one, the veterans signed the back of the sign before it was mounted. Names in shaky handwriting, in bold print, in block letters with trembling fingers, some adding unit numbers, others adding only initials, as if the act itself was enough. Elena Brooks signed from her wheelchair with slow, precise motion. Sergeant Carter signed with a steady hand and placed a small star beside it. Even Tom Barker, the mechanic, signed, though he added a grease fingerprint beside his name because Marines might be soldiers, but some of us fixed the trucks they rode in. Jack didn't sign. When Mary asked why, he simply said, "Because I'm already in one of the photos on the wall. That's enough." Rex lay near the doorway, chin on his paws, tail moving just enough to show he approved of the change. A young boy, maybe 8 or 9, walked over. Noah Jenkins, son of a veteran, sandy hair, shy smile, and asked, "Can I pet him?" Jack nodded, and Rex lifted his head, gentle and patient. Noah stroked the gray fur around his muzzle. "He's old," the boy said. "Old doesn't mean finished," Jack replied. "Sometimes old means earned." Noah looked up as if trying to understand a truth bigger than his age allowed. He gave Rex one more pat before running back to his father, whose prosthetic leg gleamed under the sun. The final moment came when the new sign was lifted and screwed into place. Wood fresh, letters bold, sunlight catching the grain like it had been waiting for this exact spot its entire life. Mary stepped back, wiping tears she didn't bother to hide. The diners, veterans, families, strangers, regulars, stood in silence as if dedicating a monument. Jack stood with Rex beside him, hands in the pockets of his jacket. The same rugged stillness as always, but with something softened in his eyes. Mary walked over and said, "You saved this place, Jack." Jack shook his head. "No, I just reminded people it existed. They saved it." Then, after a moment, "The Marine Corps takes care of its own. Sometimes it just needs a nudge." Mary looked at Rex, lying proud beneath the new sign, as if guarding it the same way he once guarded soldiers. "I think he knows this place is home now," she said. Jack nodded. "Yeah, I think he does." And for the first time in a long while, there was nothing left to fix, only something left to protect. Sometimes, the greatest miracles don't arrive with thunder or bright lights from the sky. Sometimes, they show up quietly, inside an old diner that refused to die, in the loyalty of men who never forgot a meal, and in the simple act of choosing kindness when no one is watching. Mary didn't just serve food. She served hope. She reminded us that a single act of generosity can live for decades, waiting for the right moment to return, just like the way God plants blessings long before we realize we'll need them. And maybe that's what this story is really about. Not a building being saved, but a truth being revealed. When love is given freely, it never disappears. It just waits for the day it comes back multiplied. In our daily lives, we often think we don't matter, that small kindnesses are forgotten, that the world is too fast, too hard, too broken. But this story proves something sacred. God does not waste any act of goodness. He stores it, protects it, and returns it when the time is right. So if you are watching this right now, may this be a reminder for your own life. Whatever good you have given, whatever love you have poured out, whatever sacrifice you think no one noticed, He noticed. And one day, in a way you don't expect, it will come back to you. May God bless every veteran, every family who ever waited for one, and every heart that still believes kindness can change the world. One meal, one moment, one person at a time. If this story touched your heart, please share it. Leave a comment. Subscribe to the channel. Not for numbers, but so more people can see that miracles still happen, and that God is still working in the quiet corners of everyday life. May the Lord bless you, protect you, and return every good thing you've ever given, just like He did for Mary. God bless you, and God bless everyone who still believes in kindness.